but in our minds, we're like, but our times are better, our numbers are better, so we must be better. And that's like so completely fucked.
Yes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Casually Fit Life podcast. I'm your host, Ty Fischer.
I'm your other host, Anthony Mobile.
Boom. And we are here to give you everything you need to know about being casually fit and definitely not too fit.
Yeah, speaking of not too fit, today's topic we're going to break down into two segments because we are probably going to talk about both of them a little longer than we should.
As always.
As always. Topic number one. Take it away, Ty.
Topic number one. Let's just get into it. Let's go. We're going to do this. It's about Matt Frazier and some news around him. You probably already heard it by now, but we're going to talk about it. And then after that, we'll get into a book review that you're not going to want to miss. So
that's for sure.
So let's go ahead. Matt Frazier. This just came out. So if you are at all interested in the world of CrossFit and you have heard of the CrossFit Games, there's definitely two people that you would have heard about at some point or another. And the first one is Rich Froning. He won the CrossFit Games 4 times. He was the first really truly dominant force. And then the second person you probably would have heard of if you're involved recently is Matt Frazier. And he basically, on the men's side, replaced Rich Froning when Rich retired. And Matt surpassed Rich's championships, and he now has 5 as opposed to Rich's 4. And he announced the other day, maybe 3 days ago at this point, that he is retiring from the sport.
Yep.
That he is done.
First of all, I do not blame him.
No, not at all. And I think I don't know exactly, but I think he's probably like 30 or 31.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about how old he is.
Yeah.
But I don't blame him at all. Not one bit. He said he wanted to do it basically so he could live his life and not be so regimented all the time and miss out on, family things. It's kind of what I took out of his post.
Yeah.
So, yeah, pretty big news.
It's massive news, and I think that this was not the year for him to do it. So he had 4 victories. So both Rich and Matt had their second place finish, and then Rich won 4 in a row. Matt had 2 second place finishes and then won 5 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So his career has been a little bit longer in a more intense variation of the sport, I think.
I agree.
That doesn't mean that he was any closer to losing in those 5 years, because he literally has not been touched in the leaderboard for 3 years.
He was far further from losing at every given moment.
Yeah, there was never one moment. Like Rich had those moments where I was like, maybe this isn't his year. Mm-hmm. Usually the first event. And then Matt literally never had that moment.
Never wavered. I mean, obviously, except for his second place finishes. But after that, it was complete dominance, never wavering. Yeah. And I guess to his point, like in order to achieve that, he really did have to give up like every other aspect of his life, mm-hmm. which I'm sure Rich did too. But, it's just a higher iteration of the sport. The performance is just another generation.
It's the same evolution for any sport. Like it's so easy to draw the parallels, like Michael Jordan basketball, and then you have LeBron James basketball.
Yeah.
Different eras, both are incredibly impressive. I have no doubt that like Michael Jordan probably would still be the best player if you put him into today, but you can't really compare them apples to apples.
You just can't. You really can't.
Yeah.
Well, you can't, but with something like CrossFit, which it's the same thing with track and field or swimming. Like really, you still can't, but it's a little more straightforward because you can just look at the times and the numbers, right?
Yep.
With basketball, a team sport, you definitely can't. There's just too many variables.
Yeah, and it on paper makes sense, but I never thought to make those comparisons because there's this like unknown element of competition, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in first place and you only need top 5 to stay in first by a solid margin, you're just gonna back off a little
Yeah,
because that's
why
how you
wouldn't you?
win. Yeah,
Why wouldn't
it's
you?
well, because you're Rich Froning and you just like to be super dominant for no reason, or you're Matt Frazier, same thing. But
Exactly.
like everyone else is fighting for their life, and you're just like, you just gotta hang on. You gotta
Mhm.
still try, but could they have gone faster in individual events? Sure. But
Yeah.
that's why I don't like to compare them because you put them next to each other over and over and over and over again, which they did do.
Yeah, the first year that Matt was in there, they were
Yep.
next to each other. Yep. And yeah. So that is, like I said, you technically still can't compare it because of those factors that you just mentioned, like the competitive component of it, just like having them next to each other, but
Yeah.
also the evolution of the sport too, like the knowledge of how to train and that sort of stuff has evolved over times and advanced and gotten better. And
So performance enhancing drugs.
that too, they've gotten trickier.
I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I can't leave it off the table.
No, you can never leave it off the table in any sort of sport because I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
But okay, so definitely big news, and you could argue about goats for days. Um, Something that crossed my mind when I heard this news and read his post, and just kind of finding the parallels to my own life. I'm a couple years younger than him, but I've been in the sport as long as him. Like, obviously,
Longer.
maybe, yeah. Well, I mean, he's still trained like Olympic lifting, so
Right.
I would kind of count that, I suppose. But yeah, like I've had that longevity in the sport, and one of the things that went through my mind was, is he healthier now? Like a year from now, when he's not training for the games, is he healthier than
Oh,
he?
he should be healthier.
I think so too. I agree 100% because I think they talk about it in the CrossFit certification or maybe just some random CrossFit journal article or something. But performance doesn't necessarily correlate to health is one of the things they talk about all the time.
Yeah, longevity is that factor. So that's like different positions on a football team have different health
Yeah.
because who's getting hit the most? That's just a factor that you can't avoid. So the less you get hit,
Mm-hmm.
the healthier you are. So that guy does have to take a beating. Our last episode was about is longer, you need hours to work out, right?
Mm.
So you don't need hours to work out, but he was doing it anyway.
Yeah, you need hours to be the best, to be the have the highest performance output. You do. But to be healthy, no. And like we were getting at last time, those extra hours, even though they might improve your back squat or your mile time, they're taking a toll somewhere else in your body, whether it's simply joints or if it's some other, metabolic or hormonal thing that you might be messing up in the
Do
long
you,
term.
do you think there's a finite number of repetitions in a given joint through a human life cycle?
I mean, I think there's like a theoretical, like conceptually, yes. I don't know what the number is, and I'm sure it would change drastically from person to person depending
Mhm.
on how those reps are performed. But wear and tear is a real thing, and you just can't avoid it, no matter
Yeah,
what. Like friction exists, heat energy exists. Like
yeah.
something is happening. It's not a perfect like transfer of energy. So
I don't know if we ever talked about this, but a PT student friend of mine, does a mentorship, and they talked about efficacy of like X-rays and MRIs, and they said basically above 50, like over 90% of people have herniated discs. Whether they're symptomatic or not is a different story, but everybody has them.
I believe that.
So
Yeah.
it's not if it's going to be a problem, it's when is it going to be a problem? Like, are you going to be hurt from something else first? Are you gonna like you eat paleo and you go for walks and you have a good recovery and you have good mental health and then you step off the curb and get hit by a bus and now your back hurts like
Right.
ah damn.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I wholeheartedly agree that I think his life for the next 3 to 5 years, I'd say he will be improving the quality of his health.
I agree definitely, for sure. And like I was getting at kind of with my own, I guess, journey with it, if you will. Like ever since like getting less competitive and just I feel like every year I'm like evolving what I do in the gym to some extent.
Mhm.
And it's becoming more like holistic and longevity based. And sure, my work capacity has gone down. I'm weaker and I can't like crush the assault bike the way I used to be able to. But I feel like a million times better. A million times better.
Yes.
Like joints feel better. Like just I guess general like strain on my system. Like I always carry a lot of tension in my low back. I don't really feel that as much anymore. Mobility is better, but performance is way down if you compare it to the peak of when I was trying to be
I
competitive.
would I would say way down is an exaggeration. You're probably down 10 to 15, maybe 20%.
Yeah, true. But I mean, I agree. That's probably about the amount. But when you're talking about like 0.5% matters, that becomes way down.
But you can still clean and jerk, right? You can still squat snatch, you can still do muscle ups. If someone was like, I'll race you in a mile, you're like, it's on.
Yeah, I still feel comfortable doing everything. It's not like I can't do anything. It's just the capacity's lower.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I've had those days when I've done all of that competition stuff and someone's like, hey, you want to just do random physical activity? And I have to say no because it hurts.
Yeah.
You know, you're grinding out heavy sets of clean and jerk doubles. Like my hands are ripped up and my shoulders feel like shit, but it's in the program and I know I can do it. So then you're just like
Hmm.
pushing, you're Sisyphus, right? You're pushing the boulder
Yeah.
up the hill and there's no end in sight to the top of the hill.
Yeah. So I was actually also thinking about that just today too, because I was before we started here, I was doing a walk because I usually don't do too much on Thursdays from like a cardio standpoint. So I was just walking on the treadmill. And a few months ago, maybe like 6 months ago ish, I hurt my knee when I was running. And it was like I was limping for a few days when I had hurt it. And I've just been like super cautious with it up until recently, where it's really been starting to feel really good. Um, and what I was thinking when I was coming back here as I was walking, I was like, wow, my knee doesn't hurt at all. This is amazing. This is great. I've been taking care of my body and it feels great. And I was thinking, like, this is so common, at least for me, and I'm sure for plenty of other people who are trying to be competitive in something. It's like I would limp to the gym and still max out my back squat because I could muscle through the back squat, right? I could muscle through the deadlift or I could muscle through the shoulder pain to get a good time on the workout. But then I would be like crippled the rest of the day. But in our minds, we're like, but our times are better, our numbers are better, so we must be better. And that's like so completely fucked.
Yes.
Like if you're limping over to the back squat just so you could hit a PR, like priorities are fucked up at that point.
Yeah, that's right. And we've made more, I don't want to call them adult priorities because Matt Frazier was probably doing that. The top 100 males and females are probably doing that.
In
But
some way, yeah.
yeah, they're getting their livelihood from that.
Exactly. So I mean, I don't blame it at all. And like if you're an athlete or you're a competitor in anything, like you're going to make those trade-offs.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, you need to reassess, right? And like I'm not making $1 million a year doing this
Or any, right?
or any dollars whatsoever. So,
None.
so maybe I bail out. Maybe I stayed in it a little too long, actually, because it just wasn't worth it. But if you are making, you're winning the games, you're getting $250,000 every year on top of sponsorships and other sort of winnings from other competitions. Yeah,
Yep.
push through it for a few years and set yourself up for success in the long term. But you can't do it forever. You do have to change priorities at some point. But
So do you think Matt had a fear of losing at all?
I think he always had a fear of losing. That's what he said. I think I actually believe him. Like I think he really did have a fear of losing, and that's why he worked so hard. I don't think that's why he bailed out. I think he knows, like at a certain point, you're just like, okay, I kind of proved this to myself,
And to everybody.
to everyone else, but that doesn't even matter. Like I did it 5 years in a row. I know if I wanted to do it again, I could. Like I
Yeah.
have no doubt in that. So I do think he really quit for the reasons that he said. He just wants to like actually spend time with his wife and enjoy life a little bit.
Right. His new-ish wife too.
Yeah. So, but what I was wondering is like almost for sure, right? Almost for sure. he's just going to be on the Mayhem team one of these years, right?
Yes.
He's going to be him and Rich. Maybe
Yeah.
not immediately, maybe not, although maybe.
Well, you saw that article about the falling out that they had, I guess.
What, Rich and Matt?
Matt said that Rich just like cut him off kind of and like stopped talking to him.
I did not. So enlighten me.
Let me see if I can find the article.
Because when I read this, or when I heard about his retirement, I was just thinking, okay, he lives in Tennessee. He's been training there. He'll probably take a year off, and then he'll just be like casually fit. Hey, and he'll join. He'll join the Mayhem team.
He'll join the podcast team.
Yeah.
So it was on a podcast. I don't think it was on his podcast, and I had an article about it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he just said like, they were talking and then Rich just stopped responding to him. And that's odd.
Yeah, it sounds odd.
Yeah, it's odd for two people. And Matt said something like he felt like he wasn't the only one that that's ever happened to. But conjecture, find the article, read it, check it out for yourself. I really do like both of them as athletes. I've seen them in person compete. I've seen them in person talking. I think that they're good for the sport because they have they're very different. Matt, I feel like, is a little bit more like outgoing, cocky, but it's because he knows that he works harder than everybody else.
Yeah.
Rich had this quiet, internal, mind of steel that I thought was very, very awesome. But I think that if Rich continued in individuals, he would have lost to Matt.
So do I.
Because
slight age different there. Slight age different.
Yep, but only slight. We're talking three years maybe.
I think 3 years max. Yeah. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does make a bit of a difference.
It does.
When you're at the end of that age range and he's in the prime, that does make a difference. But I'd still agree nonetheless. I agree he would have eventually lost to Matt.
Rich never had to sprint to make sure he won.
No.
And Matt always sprinted to make sure he won.
Yeah. I mean, Rich did, I believe, I want to even say the year he beat Matt in the final event, he kind of, in a sense, sprinted. For him, he put the gas pedal down on that one.
That was just what was always cool to watch him. He was like a steam engine, they're big and heavy. And he was one of the heavier athletes for his size at some of his competition times, but he was just like chugging. And you'd see a decline in speed from everybody else. And he would either stay flat or rise up a little bit. But he just had, that's what I mean.
Amazing.
His eyes were forward and he just knew where he was going to go and how to get there.
So, that being said, anything else you'd like to throw in on this Matt Frazier topic?
One more thing.
Let's hear it.
I think that he retired 1 year too early because this was the COVID CrossFit Games, which was drastically different. Now, it's not different in the people that were competing because it really was the best of the best and they qualified and whatnot. But I think in my mind, when you compare the two, I see 4-4.
Yeah, there's an asterisk on the fifth one. And it's funny because they were having the same conversation when it comes to basketball this year with the NBA.
Oh, yeah.
I forget who I was listening to, but somebody was saying basically the same thing because they were in the bubble.
Yep.
The point they were getting at was that they're not saying one way or another that it was necessarily easier. In fact, there were components that you could talk about that make it harder.
Right.
But either way, there's always going to be this, but it was in the bubble sort of thing. You're always going to have to note that it was in the bubble. And that maybe it goes down as being harder after people reflect upon it. But who knows?
Yeah, it definitely could be harder because of all of the circumstances around.
But it's undeniably not the same.
Yeah, it's undeniably different. So, I mean, eating shit for one more year sucks.
Yeah.
But I mean, I really think Matt probably could have taken the gas off on some of his training and continued through and still been number one.
I will say before I knew that they were still doing the CrossFit Games, because I thought they had canceled it
Yeah.
for 2020. Um, I thought that either he was going to retire and not go for number 5,
Yeah.
or my other thought was if anyone's going to beat him, it's going to be in this next one because we'll see who could keep the pedal down harder
Yeah.
for that extended training season.
Oh
But
my
keep
God, that
going.
would have been awful.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that, if you're Noah Olson or one of those guys that are consistently second and third like that,
Yeah.
and you're like, wait a second, we're just going to do a whole nother year of training, like you're so hungry
Yeah.
that hunger could over the course of a year overcome some maybe like, I don't know, complacency that Matt may have had if we didn't have the games. So
Yeah.
I was thinking either he would retire or if someone's going to beat him, it would be that one. But I guess they did have him anyways, and he's still retiring anyways. So
Yeah. I'm not faulting the guy. He has his 5. He has his 5 rings all on his hand.
yeah,
He's a great human being. He's great for the sport. Now I'm excited to see what he's going to do.
yeah,
Like Rich signed a lifetime contract with Reebok, probably more than what Reebok actually wants to sign for, but it's too late.
yeah. They probably thought it was gonna go, the sport was gonna go a little higher than it did, I'm sure. But yeah, they signed him, so that's it.
Listen, he's a household name. He's like an American boy. He's like born and raised in the Midwest. He's like religious a little bit. There's a lot of people that are in love with that kind of person, right?
Yeah,
He's like your traditional American.
it's like for all those reasons that I like Matt instead, actually.
Me too.
But
But my
nonetheless,
wife likes Rich better.
oh, okay.
So I gotta sit on both sides of the argument. She thinks Matt's a little cocky.
I love that though. I love it.
I like anyone who can create this space, this amount of dominance in a sport.
Same, like, people talk about it as like you're just bandwagoning sometimes, but I'm like, no, I just really, I could call it whatever, maybe it is, but I just really love seeing somebody who is so good at what they do that like you can't even fathom. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, how do you beat him? Uh, luck?
Yeah,
He
luck.
breaks his leg.
Yeah, you take them out in the parking lot.
Someone breaks his leg.
No, I don't know. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does next for sure.
Have you listened to his podcast?
No.
Me
What is
neither.
it?
No, he and Savan, and maybe there might be one other person. Savan, for those of you who don't know, has been involved with CrossFit from the very beginning, and he was like on the media team as a journalist, and he's done some super cool things. He's basically like the historian. He's gonna be old and retired in the chair, and then telling the story about how the evolution of CrossFit led to the opening of the boutique fitness sphere, because it is 100% CrossFit, without a doubt. No Orange Theory, no 45. Like CrossFit came first, and they were nailing it. But yeah, those two have been doing a podcast, and I imagine that's a good financial move for him.
Yeah.
So
Just based off the numbers we're seeing.
right. It's a good financial move for everyone. So I'm excited for him. I'm happy for him that he is choosing to step back into his life. I want to know if Tia is going to keep going, because I think she's another equally dominant force.
I think she should go for 6. That's what I think.
Why the heck not?
Because Tia, I got so mad in the beginning because like the first year she won, she wasn't on anybody's radar really.
Mhm.
And it was like, oh shit, she won. And then the second year, like the year after that, when leading up, they're talking about like, all right, the CrossFit Games are coming up. Who do you got? Nobody had Tia. Everybody's like, she's a fluke. Everybody's back on the Katrin train. Tia comes, dominates. The next year it was the same thing. They were all
Really?
like, all right, Katrin's coming back this year or something. And I'm like, guys, she won twice. You're not even going to mention her name?
Yeah. It's not a fluke.
She's the most, yeah, arguably she will be the most dominant. I think she's one behind Matt right now.
I think so too.
So
At first it was like Rich and Annie, they repeated, and then Annie fell off, and then you had, Katrin, and then Katrin repeated again, right? Or did she go one
I
on,
think
one
she
off,
did.
one on?
I don't know if she did a three-peat, actually.
Or repeat. Sorry, two.
She might have won twice in a row, but she might have only won twice, like period.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm always surprised that actually that Katrin wins. I don't see her as like a dominating athlete on the field. I love watching Sarah compete because she's like a wild dog. She's like, she's an animal.
Yeah. That's fine.
Katrin is a little more collected. Not to say that it's better or worse, but Sarah's like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
But I think Tia has it, and I don't see her getting kicked off of that first place podium in a while.
No, not unless she decides to step away, but I think she could keep going for it. And I think what we've seen so far is we just don't have enough data, but it seems like the women have a bit of a longer career. They can do it a little bit longer than the men. I don't know if that'll hold up. And I only say that because I can think of at least, Sam Briggs and a couple others that were really pretty highly dominant, even at like 34. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
So,
just too hard because you can't improve your performance at that level and get older, but everyone else is.
yeah.
But yeah, that's fun. Maybe the CrossFit Games will be a little less boring now that there's some contention, but
Yeah.
it really sucks to be the first person to win without Rich and Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. You end up like, I don't
It's no
know.
one's fault, right? But they're just like, oh, now that Frazier's not in, the first person to win is Bureau
Yeah.
Carl Goodmanson or Pat Vellner.
Yeah. That's a great point. It will actually make the games more interesting.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for at least.
If nothing else, like I'll actually say, I wonder who won. Whereas for the past 5 years, I haven't said that at all.
They should just rent an island and have a gladiator event.
Mortal Kombat, dude.
Same thing.
Yeah.
It's cool with me. All right, let's talk about our book review here.
Yeah, moving on. What book is it?
So Ty gave me this recommendation because we're always trying to get better. It's called The Charisma Myth, which you can't see at all.
Yeah, you just disappeared.
Want to see my magic trick? And I'm back. So
Right.
the Charisma Myth is Olivia Fox Cabane.
Cabane, something. I don't know. I just read it, so who knows?
Yeah, anyway, the Charisma Myth is how anyone can master the art and science of personal magnetism.
All right, so you just finished reading it recently, correct?
Just finished.
Okay, so you're going to be a little more fresh on this because I read it maybe close to a year ago at this point, probably around a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
I just brushed up on some notes that I took, but I'm not going to be as fresh as you. So why don't I just give you what I remember, my general takeaway, my feel from the book.
Why did you recommend this book specifically?
So, well, first, I don't know why I found that book, to be honest with you. Nobody recommended it to me. And if I recall, I was just like looking on Amazon for, I don't even know what I was looking for. Maybe it was like leadership books or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Cat food?
What's that?
Cat food or like new watches?
Yeah, definitely. But no, I can't remember why exactly I found it, but I found it. And the reason why I recommended it was because I thought it was, after I read it, I felt like it was a really, almost like a must read for anyone who has any ambitions of leading a group of people in really any capacity, even if it's just like trying to, honestly, just your family. If you're just trying to lead your family, be like somebody who is able to communicate well with your family, and then your friends, and then if anything in career wise, because really that's what it is. It's all about communicating with people.
Yep.
Now, this book, when I first came across it, when I was like reading the summary of it, or my assumption was it was very similar sounding to a famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yep.
So have you read that one at all?
It's right there on my bookshelf that you can't see. Yeah.
I have. I think I still have the Charisma Myth. It's right here, but I think I got rid of the other one, and I'll tell you why. Because that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I read it like years ago, and I just remember it feeling very sleazy. Like,
Really?
yeah, and again, I read it years ago, so I don't remember the specifics, but I remember how it made me feel,
Hmm.
and it was like I felt like it was just like how to manipulate people, like legit. Like that's what I remember from it. And I was kind of expecting the same going into this book, but I was just giving it a shot. And once I got into it, I realized that it wasn't that at all. So How to Win Friends and Influence People seemed very extrinsic, like I
Yep.
said, how to manipulate people in a way. Um, and this one seemed way more intrinsic, how to basically control yourself and get in a better mental state and have self-confidence, more or less. Is
Those
what
were literally, I had the exact same thought.
Yeah, and so that when I got into the book, and it was pretty apparent pretty early on that it was going to be that way when I started reading it, I was like, "Whoa, this is the answer. Like, forget How to Win Friends and Influence People. Throw that one away." Like I did.
You literally threw it away. That's crazy.
Maybe I donated it. I don't remember.
Right, right. You recycled it, you gave it to somebody else.
Yeah, but this book is the one you got to read because it's way more. It's probably the strategies in this book are probably going to work better, and they're also just going to feel better.
Hmm.
Like you're going to feel like you're not taking advantage of anybody because you're not. So I'm going to stop there, and I got more to say, but let's hear what you got to say on the book.
So my feelings were, I like categories, and I feel like they gave you categories that you could fit into, and they don't say that you need to be cornered into one, two, three, or four, and that even some work better in certain situations.
Right. So what is like the whole premise of the book?
So there are four types of charisma, and you fall into one that you prefer. And if you're trying to be charismatic, you should lean into your specific type of charisma instead of trying to be like somebody else.
Yes.
Now, the downfalls are that there are situational best practices where certain ones won't work as well, like the authoritative one. And I have this chart up right here because I thought it was actually exceptional. The chart is like the cons of kindness is people can be over attached to you, or they won't actually take what you're saying seriously because they think you're over eager to assist.
Right. So there's situations in which certain types of charisma will be better,
More effective.
more effective,
Mhm.
and it may not be the type of charisma that is natural to you.
Yep. So imagine you're let's say you're a first responder. You don't
Mhm.
want to give off kindness, charisma, or visionary. You need
Yeah.
authority.
Yep.
Do
100.
this and do it now because I said to do it.
Exactly.
You know, you have this confidence piece that you walk into. You project sternness. There, people will listen to you in that moment. It may not carry over longer. Those other ones actually carry over better, but for that specific scenario, that's where you end up. So if you chose a career path that fits your personality, you should kind of like look where you fall and see where those would work best.
Yeah. I love that example too, because I actually think you and I were talking about it on a couple episodes ago about like that almost not like non-emotionally reactive, like as a leader, like just taking things in and listening kind of.
Mhm.
And I agree that that is probably like what you should do in 90% of scenarios. But emergency situation, like you just said,
Mhm.
you got to step up like authoritative wise. And that's a great example of how you have to kind of adapt to the situation.
Yeah, so the four types of charisma. So when they were describing in the book, they always said the type, though they gave you the description, and then they gave you like a subtext and confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always paired with confidence. Um, I think that is a nice little like note in my head, but I don't think that it means you have to act into this confidence category or archetype. It should come naturally as you work on that kind of charisma. So you have authority charisma, which is on a foundation of confidence. You have visionary, which is belief, focus, which is on presence, and kindness, which is on caring.
And maybe we can try and pick some examples of each one of those.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start with authority. Now they gave like Winston Churchill is one of them. So the people that they said Colin Powell, Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher, I don't really know all of those people that well.
No.
But they don't necessarily have to be liked, but they're listened to because of their body language. You know, they stand up tall. It's a little bit of everything, but the words were intimidating, which is a negative connotation, but then you pair it with impressed, which is a positive connotation. So authoritative works, in my mind, with, I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to say like your underlings, or what would you be like your manager and your, what would you call people that are managed?
Your employee.
Your directs.
Your reports. Yeah.
Yeah. So your manager and your direct. So if you're a manager in an authoritative energy type or charisma type, if your directs are motivated in this to get the same goal as you, I think you can consistently hold on to this authoritative belief. But if they're not, they're just going to feel like you're being a jerk to them, because it is a little bit more standoffish because you're giving orders. So to me, this is like the best way that this works is the military.
I was just about to say, when I think of authoritative, I definitely think of military situations, or like you said, first responder.
But learning how to listen or take orders is a super, super valuable skill. And it can go both ways, right? You get like malicious compliance. Oh, boss said never to do this before 2:00. And then something happens and you're like, well, it's 1:58. You ordered me not to do it until 2:00. Right. So it can go both ways. So this was the one that I'm the weakest in.
Me too. I would say that.
So this is something that as I progress through my career path, I need to be able to, or I want to be able to summon it when I need it and then put it away. It's not going to be a cornerstone for me just because it doesn't feel right. I think I'm more effective in the other categories.
I also think, and maybe again, we both said this is our weakest, so hopefully this isn't completely biased, but unless you're in the military or a first responder or, like an emergency room person, like it's probably least often necessary.
Yeah, they gave an example about letting someone go, and this is not the right piece of charisma to pull out as your primary when you have to fire somebody.
Right.
But I do think that the steps leading up to a fire, you're doing reviews, you're telling people that they need to do things. Sometimes I think you just have to say, this is what I need from you and I need it now.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, I'm bad at that. I feel bad at that.
I think it's also super necessary. Like, we said the military so many times, but more real world, if you're in whatever job you're in and you're under like just a strict deadline, like chaos hit you for a second and you got to figure things out. You got to solve this problem quickly.
Yeah.
I think that's a great, that could be a great application of it right there.
Yep.
You don't have time to debate about the absolute best solution. You just need a solution right now.
A solution, right.
Yeah.
So then you have visionary, and that's Steve Jobs. What?
Elon Musk too.
Elon Musk, Martin Luther King Jr. Nobody, I would imagine nobody that worked for Steve Jobs said he was nice.
No, they would probably say he had a lot of authoritative in him too.
Right.
Probably too much, but he got away with it because he was such a visionary.
Yeah, the people wanted what he was selling, whatever it was. And I think of the four, this would probably be my third. So we're getting up and up and up in my skill sets. I can be like this when I'm talking to certain people, but for me, I can't summon it at will. This is something that I have to really, really pay attention to and call it in. So this is hard work for me.
Same. And this is potentially, like, the idea of it is to get people to believe in what you believe in, basically. And so this could be the most powerful version.
Yeah.
Because if you can make them believe it and feel strongly about it for themselves, then they don't even need you anymore to be pushing them because they're bought in.
So in the book, the example that they had was the Jim Jones and the mass suicides.
Yep.
But I think there's a more relevant
Biden.
case, right, of the riots.
Biden. Oh, I thought. Oh, okay. Sorry. No, I'm kidding.
Biden, right. So like, yeah, the whole election fraud thing. It's a visionary. It's a belief. It's
The whole cult of Trump.
right. The whole cult of Trump. So we just lost at least 70 million of our listeners, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
70 million of them. All right, but
we got like 10 other million left.
I think that's enough. But yeah, so that's a much better, more current case study. You know, the belief is that we're going to save America. You don't need the evidence and you don't need logic and there's no objectivity to it. It's just, I feel their energy and how much they want this to come into fruition. So I'm just this is blind following.
Yeah, pretty much.
So this is the most dangerous, but the most effective.
Yeah, like I said, it can be the most powerful. I guess it depends on exactly how you want to measure that. But when you can get however many hundreds of people Jim Jones got to commit suicide all at once, like 800,
900.
900, yeah, wow, like that's crazy.
It's insanity. And if you've never seen a documentary about that, you should definitely watch it.
And I haven't, and I will. But I was going to say, like politics in general or religion in general is this, but really this is talking about putting it into one person.
Yeah.
Like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Steve Jobs, like these people who can really get people to just buy in for better or worse.
Yeah. And I would definitely be a person who would invest in Elon. I think he can save the world. Do I think he's the best person? Definitely not. But he's willing to put his money and his energy where his mouth is. He has conviction. So conviction is the big word here.
Yeah.
So now we go into so should we go in order of my strengths as we move our way up?
I would say so far I'm with you 100% on the order. Like definitely worse at authoritative, a little bit better at that visionary thing. And now it'll be interesting to see where you go with the next two. So go.
Yeah. So my next strongest, I would say, is this one was really close for me. If I'm at work, I don't know. I can't decide. But I think my gut is telling me kindness is next.
Yeah, like you're a better listener than you are kindness. Yeah.
Yeah. But I run out of the ability to focus quicker than I run out of the ability to be for kindness.
Same. I would say.
So for kindness, you have the Dalai Lama, you have Mother Teresa. You could even say that like there's some George Bush in here, like when he's kissing babies. That's like a good motion of kindness. So this is where you accept people as they are and you're just there for them. And I would say my kindness in this way and acceptance is just like, because I honestly don't care what you do if it doesn't hurt me.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. And I think what we've already kind of laid out here is that of these four types, those first two are definitely highly correlated in a sense. And so are these second two, which is interesting, right? Like if you're whichever one of these second two that you're better at, it requires a significant amount of the other one as well.
Yeah. So
except for the first two.
This one is like projecting warmth and caring, and there's body language where you turn towards someone, you're a little bit closer to them. It falls into the next one without getting too much, but you'll be listened to, but you don't have to force it. You're not commanding respect. People give it to you because they like what you have to say.
Yeah, and they believe that like at the end of the day, whether or not you achieve the goal, that you still care about them, right? You're still there for them. The relationship is almost a little bit superior to the goal.
Yeah, I think this one would be the hardest one to like ramp up and back down, because if you're not kind to someone at one point, it's hard to come back from that.
It literally just takes one moment. Yep.
So the downfalls here, you can be authoritative and then you can be passive, but people won't be less or more inclined to listen to you if you're easier on them or harder on them at some point. So this one has the biggest risk because there's no coming back from it, or it takes 10,000 impressions over one.
Yeah.
So the last one is focus, and this is the one where they gave Elon Musk, they put him in this category. So They said he was sitting on the floor in the offices. Everyone has a desk. His desk is in the corner. When he's behind his computer monitors, you talk, he's ignoring everything. The second he steps away from that work, whatever is there in front of him, he is 100% tuned in on.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that I think I can be very good at, and I fatigue in it quickly because this is very difficult unless you consistently practice it over and over again. So your presence, like Gandhi, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, how well can you listen and understand what other people are saying?
That is super interesting because I didn't remember that they put him in that category, Elon Musk, because in my mind, I see him as a visionary, but it makes sense why he's so prolific in different industries.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily an industry that he went to school for or anything like that. Like he just became an expert in these areas. And how would you do that? Like you have to be super focused and mindful whenever you're researching something or reading it or talking to an expert. Like you need to be all in that moment in order to take in that info. And then you have to have that vision to be like, guys, we're actually going to Mars. Like we're doing that.
So he was a visionary in the beginning of his career, like with Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And now that he's the richest person on the planet, how do you continue to do that? So that's where the focus comes in.
Yeah, I think you need them both. Like you need them both there.
So he proved that his visions were correct, and he will consistently have conviction over them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
On expansion. But this one, I think I'm pretty good at listening. People tell me a lot of information very quickly in a relationship. I don't know. This must be why, because I don't think I'm overly empathetic. I don't think I'm overly visionary. It's just, this is like, I actually want to listen to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So this one can help you build deep relationships quickly.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
People feel paid attention to.
I would say that the CEO of my current job is very good at these latter two for sure. Only because I had a chance to like meet with him one time,
mm-hmm.
and he made you feel like he was kind for sure. Never felt like intimidated or like he was trying to do, exert his presence over you in any way. But at the same time, commanded presence just by being in the room. Or it just like naturally happened.
Yeah.
And then he was a phenomenal listener as well. And I only met him like that one time for an hour, and I always really appreciated that. Thought he was really good at that.
Yeah, I see the C-suite or the executive suite as focus charisma if they're truly effective at being leaders, because you can't be authoritative over people who like they're not inspired or motivated to work and impress you. They don't care about that. They just do what they're told because you said to do it.
Right.
So the book did say that authoritative hampers creativity.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
That's where you like do it this way, not because it's the right way, but because it needs to be done, and this is how I'm telling you to do it.
Exactly. No, I've been there. I've felt that way before, when I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do this because that's the way they want it done. I think this is dumb, but like this has to be done. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you don't come up with a better solution or anything like that. You just do it.
Yeah. So in the first 10 pages of the book, it made me super conscious. Like anyone tell you like, how many times do you blink a minute? And then you're like, I don't know. And then you blink and you're like 1, 2, 3. So they gave 3 tips in the first 10 pages, and it was how to be more charismatic. So one of them was pause 2 seconds before you talk. I think that's great advice.
I'm going to give my tips too here in a second.
Yeah. The other one was reduce how quickly and often you nod, because that's a pleaser's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third was lower the intonation of your voice at the end of your sentence.
So it's funny because I remember that being in there.
Yeah.
I remember that feeling very much like those extrinsic things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, these are just a bunch of cheap tricks, but they do work. But I view those things as the supplements to the training program. You know what I mean? Like they definitely will enhance your charisma, if you will.
Yeah.
But those things by themselves, without all the intrinsic work,
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's not going to work. But what I think is a couple things that I wanted to say first. One, the thing that this thing distilled for me was when you say charisma, what do you think? Like I think of, um, like Chris Hemsworth, like Will Smith, Robert Downey Jr. type stuff.
Shaq.
Shaq, yeah, exactly. I think of that like that. You think of that extroverted, like
Hmm.
smiling, like person who can whatever, command an audience and all that sort of stuff. And like that was like my definition of charisma. I never considered that there were other types of charisma, and that was just one type. And so that was the first like empowering thing I would say that I took from the book was those other four types of charisma that you mentioned. You
Hmm.
can lean into whichever one is most natural to you and have a very similar level of success leading people, as opposed to those smiling and you know presidential type charismas.
I never liked, the like, oh, what's your INTP or ENFJ? Do you remember those personality types tests?
I mean, I don't remember specifics. I know I've like heard of some of them, but
Yeah, there was like introverted versus extroverted. Because I mean, I don't think I fall. I'm like an even split. I'm perfectly happy.
situational.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy being by myself alone, and I'm perfectly happy in a large group of people. And I usually don't like knowing that I'm transitioning from one to the other, but as soon as I'm in that, it's fine. It's like, oh yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, man.
It's
But
situational, and I mean, I know for me, it's like my capacity. I can do both, but
mhm,
my capacity for the social extroversion
mhm.
maybe runs out quicker than it does for other people. But as long as it's within that capacity, like within that time limit, as long as it's within that battery life, I can do it great. But as soon as that battery's dead, it's like, all right, I got to get out of here.
There was an exercise or a tip in the book about introversion and extroversion, and they talked about a social situation where you should take introversion breaks. You
Yes.
go hang out in the bathroom for 5 minutes, you recharge, you just go out to your car. And I think there are vices in large social gatherings that easily allow that to happen. There are
Easily.
smokers, they go outside and they have a cigarette, it takes 5 minutes, they come back inside and they're a different person.
Yep.
Usually it's because, you might think that it's because of the cigarette or they might just go outside for a walk, but it's just because they're recharging or they're debriefing,
Yeah.
and then they can come in and pretend or like fight against their urge and still be charismatic, but just in a focus or a kindness kind of way.
100%. All right. Let me give you some of the tips that I took.
Hit me.
And
I love this book, by the way.
I love this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time out of all 7 that I've ever read in my whole life. And you can tell that I love it because I actually took notes on it when I read it and I still have them.
Nice.
All right. So you hinted at it earlier. You said they always mentioned and confidence.
Hmm.
I think there was another phrase in the book, and it was something along the lines of they just kept repeating presence, power, and warmth.
Hmm.
And so, like, if nothing else, when I'm going into a situation where I feel like I need a little bit of a kick or whatever, I try and remember those 3 words: presence, power, and warmth. If you can just feel like you have that presence and not second guess it, and
Hmm.
that power, but also exert warmth, if nothing else, that's at least going to come across in a positive light. So I like that note. Um, Couple like tips, I guess. One of the things was developing like physical in a physical environment beforehand. And I still do this like when I'm getting on a Zoom call or something and I know I'm going to have to be speaking. One of the tips it'll say is, well, make sure like you're not cold, make sure
Yeah.
you're not like having some sort of aches and pains somewhere, or you're not like super focused on how hungry you are or whatever. Like you got to take care of those physical things because they'll keep bubbling up if they're
That
bothering
was
you.
the wool suit in the sun piece.
Okay, I don't remember that reference, but
Yeah, I mean, I just read the book, but in the scenario, it was a guy having a meeting. It was a very big business meeting, a sales meeting, something like that. And he was super confident and prepared. They went out to lunch, and he was in a wool suit, and the sun was beating, and he just started to sweat and get super itchy, and that made his discomfort come out to the surface. But they
Okay.
gave some cool exercises, and I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it was like recognize it and acknowledge it and just say, hey, I'm sorry, the sun is like
Yep.
really killing me. Can we change location? Can we go inside? This is like incredibly uncomfortable. And I think that's good advice that people tend to think like, I'll just suffer through it, but you don't have to.
You don't have to, and the other person will be fine. Like nowadays with Zoom calls and stuff like that, it might be in the form of like you need a sip of water or something. You're giving a presentation, but you need a sip of water, but you feel like you can't because you have to rush through the slide or whatever. Like take a break, say sorry 1 second, mute if you need to, take that sip of water, come back, take a breath, and then go. But
Or
yeah,
don't even say sorry. Just do what you need to do.
right, sure. But you're right, acknowledging it, that's definitely a great tip. I think one of the other ones on that was if for whatever reason you can't change it, I think it said just to dive into it almost.
Yes. Yep.
Like obviously you might not be able to do that if you're speaking, but if you're not speaking and you have to give like you just have to like be present or at least appear present, then like dive into it in a sense.
Yeah. Find whatever your experience of discomfort is. And for different people, it's in different places. Like, for me, and I imagine most people like this, you feel this like tension in your chest when you're getting nervous or you get a little twitchy, but just like experience that feeling. And then you get used to it over time. And then you can say, oh, okay, this is just a feeling.
Yes, exactly. That's great. That's a great way to phrase it because that's how I feel when I give like presentations. Like I feel like I've spoken in front of people so often. Like whether most of that's probably at the gym speaking to a class, but then also just like giving presentations at work or at school or something like that. And every time, almost without doubt, I get like this nerve beforehand. Um, and in the beginning, especially at school, like undergrad, giving a presentation for the first time in front of like a big class or something, uh, it was like, oh shit, can't do this. But now, even though I still get it, it's just like, oh, that's just what I feel before I talk, and then it's always fine. So let's just keep it calm. So
Yeah, in the first half of the book, there were a decent amount of exercises that you could do. The one that I thought was a little weird is it was about focus. And she said, if you're losing focus, go into your feet and like physically feel your feet on the ground and grounding or in your toes. And I thought that would kind of pull you away from the focus of what's in front of you, but I'll have to try it.
yeah, no, you're right. I think maybe the idea is you have an hour-long meeting and either you're going to miss the whole thing or you're
Yeah,
going to miss part of it to do this exercise and come back.
that's a great way to interpret it.
But okay, so a couple other things that I really liked from the book. One was called, this one helps also if you're doing a presentation or a project or anything like that. She called it the responsibility transfer exercise. Do you remember that?
Yep.
I actually did this once or twice, like legitimately, not just to try it out for the book, but actually like did it for real. And it definitely worked for me. But the whole idea was you basically just close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and you actually visualize like whatever it is that's bothering you. Like you visualize it in some form on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And you visualize whatever higher being you believe in, even if it's just the universe or divineness or whatever you want to call it. And you actually like picture yourself handing it over to that thing
Mm-hmm.
and letting it go. And I
Was
did
that
that.
the same one where you look at you on the floor and then you zoom out and it's you in a house and then it's a house on the ground and the ground on a planet and the planet in the universe and then you're really small?
That's another way to think of it. I've heard of that in the context of like mindfulness meditation.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely one of the exercises that I've heard of for that. But same thing. It's basically just saying like, hey, look, it's going to be fine. Whatever happens, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And
First
that
half of
like
the
calms
book
me
was
down.
really loaded in these exercises before they even named the charisma.
Yeah. And the other one that I really like, which super lends itself to the kindness one, um, I think she called it the angel wings exercise. Do you
Mm-hmm.
remember that?
Yeah.
Dude, it's so good. It's like the whole idea, it's super simple. You're talking to someone and it's helpful when you can feel yourself getting angry or irritated or frustrated. But even if you're not and you want to try it out, and you visualize that person with angel wings on, like you can see the wings on them. Like the idea is like we all have these angel wings, you just can't see them. She was like, so visualize them, and by seeing that person as an angel, you're just going to naturally like chill out and calm down and have a little bit more empathy, warmth. Exactly. So that's a cool one. I thought that was really useful. But yeah, I don't know. I love the book. I think it's all about, I don't know if we did it justice or not, but the whole idea was trying to develop really confident internal mental states and leaning into what is natural to you and authentic to you. Maybe trying to learn a couple tips for situations that aren't natural to you.
Yeah.
But you know, trying to be a little bit more I guess mastering yourself is
Yeah, you don't have to be someone else or someone else's idea of charismatic. You can't copy those people because the most charismatic or charisma-full people act like themselves because it is sustainable.
Yeah.
You are you forever.
And I know that sounds like a weird like a useless tip, like, okay, be yourself. Well, I've been myself and it's not working. So like give me something else. Read the book is what I would say, because whatever you think you are that's not working, you can improve upon it and you can fix it in a very authentic way.
Yep.
And I think the book gives you the tips to do that, the tools to do that.
Yeah, I will say like some of it I skimmed through in the beginning because it was a lot of like, oh, it's felt like some pretty generic advice,
Yeah.
but there are little gray exercise blocks. And if you don't care about the content, you could just read the heading, read the first paragraph, and then go to the exercises. And those will be super, super helpful. I thought all the exercises were pretty cool. Like one of them, it was like someone cuts you off in traffic. And I do this all the time. I'm like, oh, that person, I said this already, they poop in their pants. Like they have to get home.
Yeah.
They have to right now. And I'm like, oh man, I feel bad for them. So now I'm feeling empathetic. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. It's just like, they cut me off. It's fine. It's no big deal.
Right.
And there was some cool exercises like that. And then the latter half of the book is about exercises to improve your specific style of charisma or ways to show up in different areas like body language. Like the handshake thing was decent, but it was, people know how to give good handshakes these days.
Yeah. Again, I think I liken all those tips and tricks. Those are like the supplements.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they're definitely helpful if it's a situation or a type of charisma that you are bad at and you need all the tips and tricks that you can use. But don't forget about actually finding the one that is your natural fit and mastering that, because that's going to take you so much further than any like superficial tips will take you.
Yeah, there's so this book is fantastic, first of all. And then Tim Ferriss has a comfort challenge series on YouTube, and you can probably just look them up on the blog. Some of them are a little goofy, but being comfortable with discomfort is like the life's journey.
Yeah, that's the whole with Tim Ferriss, the stoic, like that's what the whole idea is, right?
Yeah, so you just have, if you know where you're uncomfortable and you can just put yourself in a situation just like working out that's slightly more challenging than the one before it, over time you'll always look at something and say like, oh, I can never do that. But look at all the stuff that you could never do before and now it's second nature. Like picking up the phone and calling somebody, or approaching someone on the street just to say like, hey, I like your shirt. That feels weird at first, but if someone told you, hey, I like your shirt, you'd be like, oh, thank you. That makes me feel so good about it.
Yeah.
So everyone's struggling with these kind of things. And I think this is a book that everyone that I work with, because I work in a gym, right? So I don't want people to be cheerleaders. I don't want people to be like hype men. I don't want people to be like, these quiet, aggressive, like technical types. I want them to find what works best for them. And they should have like a little bit of skill in two of these other categories. And then of course there's one that you have the least affinity for. And it's just good to know that.
Yep. Totally agree.
And she has another book, which it's called The Net and the Butterfly, The Art and Practice of Breakthrough Thinking. And she's definitely convincing me to continue on reading her stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Like she definitely over delivered on my expectations of what the book would be. So
yeah.
Go
Oh,
on.
I guess the last thing that I want to say about books is, and Rich Dad Poor Dad had this effect, and I've read a bunch of, I don't want to call them self-help, but it's like personal development books.
Yeah.
Sometimes you read a book at the right time, and that book just nails it.
Changes your
So,
life.
yep. So I was having a staffing thing, an issue that I needed to deal with intrinsically so I could deal with it extrinsically to someone else. And it just like the paragraphs that I read, like 3 or 4 in a row, I was like, this is exactly what I'm going through. I love this book.
Which
But
book? This book?
yeah, this book.
Okay.
There are a couple paragraphs that like hit the nail on the head.
Perfect.
And then, I was able to sit back on it. But if you give me this in high school and I read it and I didn't have something that came right to mind, I would have been like, yeah, it's a book that I read.
Yeah, no value there. And in all fairness, that could be what I experienced with the other one, How to Win
Yep.
Friends and Influence People. So yeah, to your point, that could be the case. But for me, when I read this book, it definitely hit at the right time. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So don't stress out, but keep it on your shelf. And I thank you for the recommendation. It was great. And if only we had an Amazon affiliate link to get our 10 million subscribers to buy Olivia Fox Cabane's book.
we'd be golden.
That's right. Well, shout out to her because she wrote a fantastic piece of literature that is definitely going to stay on my shelf for a long time.
100%. So with that being said, if you have any other books or I don't know, maybe a documentary or recommendations of any sorts you'd like us to consume and review and discuss on here, or any other topics in the fitness realm, not too fit though, just casually fit, please let us know down in the comments below. Subscribe, share, like, tell everybody, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Peace.